All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. The soil contaminated by last month's train derailment in Ohio is coming to central Indiana. Neighbors are up in arms over the decision. Here's how they greeted officials at a recent town hall.
I got 3 kids, and any of my kids can say, oh, I swear to God.
Do not let the people of this area know that you are bringing these trucks here before you brought them here. And don't tell me you couldn't have done that.
Who's going to be facing that poison daily? And how do you plan on keeping it out of Turkey Creek? How do you plan on keeping it out of my grandchildren's water?
The landfill where the soil is going is in Congressman Jim Baird's district. Baird has asked state officials to halt those deliveries until the soil can be tested. He talked to our government reporter, Garrett Berquist.
Let's welcome in Congressman Jim Baird. Congressman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
What's your reaction to the soil that was contaminated by the Ohio train derailment going to a landfill in your district? Did the Biden administration give you any heads up on that?
No, and that's the concern, Gary. I mean, that's where we feel like that the Department of Transportation and the Environmental Protection Agency should have coordinated with the local officials and coordinated with local individuals to make sure they understood what was coming. We don't know what the compounds are or what the chemical makeup of those are. And so I think we need to know that. There ought to be transparency there, and the EPA and the Department of Transportation needs to clarify that. We need to make sure that we are able to handle those materials if they go into our Russellville site. And we need to make sure that we understand the long-term consequences of those materials traveling across Ohio and Indiana in order to get to this hazardous material site, certified site. I would just say, Garrett, that my interest is maybe pausing this delivery process until we can identify those characteristics that are necessary to make sure it's safe, and not only for transporting now, but the long-term risks and consequences.
How do you think the federal government should handle the contaminated soil?
Well, this is not uncommon to put it in a certified site like the Heritage Environmental in Russellville. The EPA does certify those facilities. It's just that I think this was a little too speedy, too rapid, and too quick without taking the necessary precautions.
We looked into Heritage Environmental Services past. We found some low-level violations at the Russellville site. They don't appear to be leakages or anything of that level of concern. How confident are you that Heritage will handle the soil in a way that doesn't put people at risk?
I'm comfortable with that. They've been at that facility almost 50, 60 years, and that's my home county, so never had any problems in the past.
What's been your experience working with them, both as a member of Congress and before that as a state legislator?
Well, I'm just aware of the materials that they handle, and the process that they use is for taking care of that kind of material, hazardous material. They fix the bottom of those storage facilities with clay, and then they put a membrane that prevents any leaching or any of those materials getting out in the regular soil. It's my understanding that dioxin is one of the compounds after the controlled burn that exists on top of the soil. They took a little bit of that off. I mean, I don't know how many inches, but they took, and so I want to make sure they're checking for dioxin and testing for dioxin in the soil that they're bringing to Indiana.
Should there be changes to the reporting requirements anytime the federal government moves hazardous materials?
I think that yes. I think we need to understand the local people, the local officials. We need to know when that material is moving through an area, particularly if it has any risk to people.
Since we're on the subject of moving hazardous materials, what about the rail cars themselves? Is it time to revisit some of the rules that were put in place under the Obama administration regarding braking systems and next generation tank cars for hazardous materials?
You know, I'm not totally familiar with everything that happened, but my sources would suggest that there are sensors along the railroad every 15, 20 miles, I'm not sure, but they detect hot boxes, and that this train went through a couple of those before it hit the third one, and that temperature was finally up to 250 degrees or so. So we need to make sure we check that. I think Department of Transportation needs to look into that.
Now, not every landfill can take this stuff. It's going to end up in somebody's backyard no matter what. Does that temper your view of this?
Not, you know, there are a lot of compounds and chemicals that we use for all kinds of production. And so I'm not concerned. I have a scientific background. So any of those chemicals that are handled appropriately and monitored appropriately, and we have transparency, I'm not concerned about. Well, I'm concerned from the standpoint that we need to make sure we're using the right process on this material.
Congressman Jim Baird, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, coming up, social issues dominate the final days of the first half of the session. Senate leaders give their prognosis. Welcome back. Social issues dominated the final days before legislative halftime. The Senate passed measures to take away school library protections and to ban medical gender transition care for minors. Here's what the chamber's leaders had to say.
So far, there have been bills pitched as parental rights, yet you just passed a bill that takes away parents' rights to make decisions when it comes to transgender care, gender transition care. How do you square that?
Well, I think Dr. Johnson talked a little bit about that at the microphone, and the procedures that we talked about in Senate Bill 480 have been shown to be uncertain, unproven, and life-altering, and so it just seems to make sense that you get these children that might be suffering from gender dysphoria, make sure they get counseling, make sure they get treatment people to talk to, but when it comes to either surgery or treatment by hormones or other things like that, you think you're better off waiting until they get to be 18 and be able to make that determination themselves. If you listen to, and I'm sure you did, the testimony from the hearing on 480, and I got to catch most of it, you heard some pretty powerful testimony about some folks who went through that transition early in their life and had some significant problems and even some regrets, and so that's the balance we're trying to find here. You know, that's obviously a lot of debate today on that. There's a lot of debate in committee as well, and you know, the interesting thing about that bill is, I would say, from my observation on the debate on the floor of the Senate today, that everybody agrees with where that bill is trying to get, that we don't want material harmful to minors or obscenity to be accessible, like in a school library, for instance. It's making sure that we get the language right. I don't know that it's exactly right. My hope is that they'll take it over to the House and continue to work on that. But I don't know of anybody that has told me they disagree with keeping that obscenity out of minors' hands in a school library or even in a public library. So I think they'll just continue to work on it. Well, it's significant that it gives a procedure. If somebody has sees a book in a school library, for instance, that they disagree with, then it gives a procedure that, a stepped-up procedure where I believe it's the principal and ultimately the school board that will decide, is this offensive or is this across the line? Is this harmful to minors or is this obscene? And if you give that to an elected body, they'll take a look at it, put some serious thought into it, and make a determination. I think that's an avenue that parents don't have right now.
The school library bill was pitched as a parental rights bill, and then we have 480, which takes away parental rights when it comes to transgender care. What do you make of that connection or disconnection?
Well, first of all, there's no logic behind it, because there's no logic behind either piece of legislation. The inappropriate language in the bill for the books, the library books, the word is inappropriate. It doesn't have anything to do with pornography. So it doesn't have to be pornography to be considered inappropriate. And it doesn't even require that a parent be from the school district in order to file a charge against the school district or the librarian. So those are two very glaring issues in the bill. And the author of the bill didn't like the bill, but that was the only thing he could get past, so he took a half a loaf. In regards to taking away parents' rights, I can't believe that we have a doctor who is a member of this General Assembly actually conveying to the public that he knows that our hospitals are providing medical procedures to transition children. That is not happening in this state, and we need to stop saying it. And it scares me, because what's going to lead to is going to lead to what is happening in the rest of the countries where people are being assaulted because people believe this type of stuff is going on. It's not going on in the state of Indiana. You could talk to the largest children's hospital in the state, and they will tell you they do not provide these services.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team takes stock of the session so far and the rest of the week's top headlines. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics, as we welcome back into members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Ariel Brandy and Republican Whitley Yates. Good to see you both. Let's start this week with talking about that soil contaminated from the Ohio train derailment. It's being shipped to a landfill here in Indiana, in Putnam County specifically, and residents are furious about this. Ariel, even the governor says the federal government didn't notify him. So should the Biden administration have notified state and local officials that they were going to do this?
I mean, I definitely think that we deserve to have been notified about this. There's no doubts about it. We know how dangerous these chemicals are. We know absolutely that there is harm that comes from that, but this is not the first time that something like this has happened. I think one of the most important things to remember is that it's not always pointing the finger at the administration or the Department of Transportation. We also need to be looking at the organization that is responsible for this, Norfolk Southern. That's where we need to be pointing our fingers. And I'm very interested to hear what Mitch Daniels has to say about that. As a former Hoosier and a Hoosier who has sat on that board and still does, where is his response and how he feels about how we need to be moving forward as a state when it comes to this issue, and also the responsibility that he has as a board member for Norfolk Southern?
Whitley, the railroads are federally regulated, and so is hazardous waste. So how much of a difference would notifying state and local officials really make?
I mean, I'm going to be honest, this entire presidency was predicated on having this level of transparency and restoring the soul of the nation. But when you have federal agencies that have poor communication, don't alert state leaders until after they've already reached out about what's coming down the pipeline, it doesn't set a good precedent. Because the truth of the matter is the EPA, as well as the current administration, should be connecting with Indiana state leaders, specifically Governor Holcomb, about any type of hazardous material coming here. Find someone else to do it. That's what I say. 400 miles away, we don't want it here because we don't know the implications of what it's going to do to Hoosiers and how it's going to impact our water, our air, and any other things. And so I'm disappointed, more specifically with the Hoosier that we have at that federal level, who took 21 days to go out to that site and then didn't alert Indiana leaders to let us know that this was coming our way.
Whitley, that being said, the soil has to go somewhere, right? And it can't just go to any landfill. If officials here somehow block this, wouldn't that simply force another community and another state to face the same problem?
Well, there are Ohio hazardous waste landfills that they could go to, and it would be better than shipping it from the east side of Ohio all the way to the west side of Indiana. I think that there are closer places and more places that are more convenient within the state of Ohio that it could go. And I'm worried about Hoosiers as a whole and how this hazardous material, specifically going to some of these sites that have had issues with EPA violations in the past, and how that's going to impact our lives and the health of Hoosiers in this state.
Ariel, Republicans have slammed the Biden administration's handling of the derailment from the beginning. Should the Biden administration have responded sooner or more visibly?
I mean, we saw, like Whitney said, this has happened before. This is not the first time that we've seen an instance like this take place. So I think when we're pointing the finger at the administration, it's going to continue to happen. I mean, we saw these derailments happen when Trump was in office. And so it wasn't like a very known thing that people knew were happening. So at this point, I think we all just need to own responsibility that something has to be done, and there just needs to be a better process, especially when it comes to alerting the people in these states where it's happening. I saw that obviously the mayor of East Palestine was very disappointed about not hearing from the administration on coming in. I mean, we just have to do better from the top all the way down to the bottom. This is harming the people that are living in these communities, and we have to do better at making sure that they know that their health is at risk.
Seems like you both are in agreement there. Another big headline coming out of Indianapolis this week is Lilly announcing that it will cap out out-of-pocket costs for insulin at $35 a month. Whitley, Senate Republicans blocked the measure last year to impose that cap nationwide. If Lilly thinks that this won't put them out of business, should Congress, in your opinion, reconsider making that law?
I just want to go ahead and be on record saying that I'm excited that Lilly is capping insulin costs. As someone who was diabetic prior to losing weight, from a father that's diabetic, a grandfather, and an uncle that's diabetic who all have to take insulin, I am excited to see these types of measures. I don't want to let people forget that an executive order was signed by President Trump to cap insulin costs that was immediately reversed by the current administration. I honestly think that anything that we can do to help Hoosiers and Americans when it comes to the price of medicine and insulin costs is what we should be doing.
To that point, Ariel, Lilly did make this decision on their own. Is this a sign that we should leave drug price issues like this up to the market?
I mean, we saw what happened at the federal level when this was brought up into the Inflation Reduction Act. Obviously, we saw that Democrats got on board with this right away. And unfortunately, the Republicans in our state at the federal level were not on board for capping that insulin price. So I think what we're seeing here is that these corporations are taking the lead of their leaders that are saying enough is enough. This is an issue that we need to address, and capping it at $35, I think, was the right move. Like Whitney said, there are so many people, even within my own family, that I know are going to be tremendously impacted in a positive way because of this. So I think we are moving in the right direction, and I'm hoping that more corporations will follow suit in making those kind of decisions for our Hoosiers.
It seems like everybody you talk to is impacted by this somehow, right? I want to turn to the General Assembly. We wrapped up the first half with a flurry of social issue bills. As you very well know, several of them focus on transgender people, especially transgender youth. There's the ban on gender transition treatment for minors, and the bill to require teachers to notify parents if a child wants to change pronouns. Ariel, we'll go to you on this one. Should there be some regulations here, maybe?
Absolutely not. We are getting into so much hate within our state, specifically attacking various constituency groups. And right now we're looking at a slate of hate to our LGBTQ sisters and brothers, and specifically for a very vulnerable population, our trans community. We have to stop. We have done nothing but attack a vulnerable population. And to consider teachers having to out their own students and talk about issues that more specifically don't need to be something that we need to be getting into when it comes to our education system. We have so many more issues to talk about. Right now, we need to be offering love and support, and we're doing everything but that. And I think it's just become attacks on hate within our state. We're moving in the direction of Florida. And honestly, I mean, it's not speaking to our Hoosier values at all.
Whitley, less than a minute. I'll let you respond.
What one calls attack, one may also call protect. Listen, my daughter is 8 years old in the second grade. If she has any type of issue at school, the school is calling me. Why wouldn't they call me for an issue like this? Why wouldn't they call me to tell me about this so that I can be not only an informed parent, but make a decision with my child and the rest of my family on how I'm going to rear that child? I think that being able to have gender affirming surgeries that change all of these things left up to when you're an adult is a great idea. Allowing them other care is also great. So this bill does not remove any other types of care for the transgender youth, but making sure that those decisions that are life altering are made when they're an adult, I think is the right thing to do, and it's protecting trans youth.
All right. Well, good conversation, ladies. We'll leave it right there. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much, and we'll be right back.
Take All Indiana Politics on the go with you. Download our podcast now. Part of the All Indiana Podcast Network and allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
All right, thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast. It's part of the All Indiana Podcast Network at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.